There was a time when I believed success was the clearest proof that a man was doing something right. My name is Julius Malema, and for many years people knew me as a strong political voice in South Africa. I spoke boldly about justice, opportunity, and the future of our nation. I worked hard, built influence, accumulated valuable assets, and lived a life that many people considered successful. From the outside, it seemed that I had everything a man could desire. I owned expensive properties, enjoyed financial security, and had access to opportunities that millions of people could only dream about. I convinced myself that these achievements were the result of determination, discipline, and personal ability. Yet, while my life became more comfortable, something inside me was quietly changing. My heart was becoming harder than I realized. Every day I spoke about social justice, but I rarely spent meaningful time among those who struggle to survive. I saw poverty all around South Africa, yet I often viewed poor people through the lens of sympathy rather than true understanding. I believed I cared, but caring from a distance is very different from sharing another person's burden. Looking back now, I understand that I had slowly lost the ability to feel the pain that many families carried every day. I was surrounded by success, but I was drifting away from compassion. I did not recognize the danger because it happened gradually, one decision at a time. Today, I am not telling this story so that anyone will admire me. I am telling it because many leaders, business owners, and successful people may be walking the same path I once walked. Then one unforgettable night, everything changed. That was the night Jesus showed me what awaits those who possess power but lack mercy for the poor. Before that night changed everything. My life followed a pattern that felt normal to me. I lived in Johannesburg, in one of the most affluent areas of Sandton. My home was a luxurious mansion worth millions of rand. I had expensive vehicles, professional security, and people who helped manage many parts of my daily life. Comfort surrounded me everywhere I went. Yet only a few kilometers away, another South Africa existed. In Alexandra Township, countless families struggled every day. Many lived without reliable electricity. Others lacked clean water. Unemployment remained a constant burden, especially among young people searching for opportunities that never seemed to come. Economic reports regularly highlighted the severity of the problem, but statistics are easy to ignore when they remain numbers on a page. The truth is that I rarely allowed myself to see the full reality behind those numbers. I would pass through poor communities on official visits. I would hear reports. I would attend meetings. I would discuss policies. But then I would return to my comfortable surroundings and continue with my life. Deep down, I believed I had already done enough. Whenever I saw poverty, I assumed the responsibility belonged to governments, organizations, or society as a whole. I did not ask what responsibility belonged personally to me. I never questioned whether God expected more than speeches and promises. Looking back now, I understand that indifference does not always appear as cruelty. Sometimes it appears as comfort. Sometimes it hides behind good intentions. Sometimes it convinces you that awareness alone is the same as action. I thought I understood the struggles of ordinary people. I was wrong. And while I continued living my successful life, completely unaware of what was coming, God was preparing a lesson that would transform everything I believed about wealth, leadership, and compassion. I had no idea that the most important night of my life was only days away. The night that changed my life began like any other. I had spent a long day working in Johannesburg. Meetings had stretched from morning into evening. By the time I returned home, I was exhausted. After a simple meal, I went to bed expecting nothing unusual. My mind was occupied with the normal concerns of leadership, politics, and responsibilities. Sometime around 1 o'clock in the morning, something happened that I still struggle to explain fully. I suddenly became aware that I was no longer experiencing the world in the normal way. It felt as though I was leaving my physical body behind. Everything around me became silent. Then a brilliant light appeared before me. The light was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was powerful yet pure, bright beyond description, yet it did not hurt my eyes. Instead, it filled me with an overwhelming awareness that I was standing before something holy. Then I heard a voice. The voice carried authority unlike any human voice I had ever heard. It was neither angry nor harsh, yet every word carried a weight that shook my soul. The voice spoke clearly. My child, look and see what awaits those who refuse to love the poor. The moment those words were spoken, fear gripped my heart. I knew this was not an ordinary dream. I knew I was being shown something important. At first, I wanted to look away. Every part of me felt uneasy. Yet the voice compelled me forward. There was no force, no threat, and no coercion. There was simply an undeniable certainty that I needed to see what was about to be revealed. The brilliant light began to fade from my view. Darkness slowly emerged, a darkness deeper than anything I had ever witnessed before. Then the scene started unfolding before my eyes. What I saw next would haunt me for weeks, challenge everything I believed about success, and force me to confront the condition of my own heart. It was only the beginning. As the darkness surrounded me, I found myself looking into a vast abyss that seemed to have no end. There was no light there, no comfort, no peace. Only a terrible emptiness filled with cries of suffering. The sounds echoed endlessly. They came from every direction at once. Some were cries of regret, some were desperate pleas for mercy. Others were expressions of sorrow so deep that words could barely describe them. I stood frozen. Then I began to see faces. To my shock, many of those faces belonged to people who had once been powerful. Some had been politicians, others had been wealthy business leaders, some had enjoyed influence over the lives of millions. During their time on earth, they were respected, feared, admired, and followed. Yet none of those things mattered where they were now. Their money was gone, their titles were gone, their power was gone. All that remained were their souls and the consequences of how they had lived. What disturbed me most was the punishment they endured. They suffered from an unbearable thirst that never ended. Again and again, they saw water in the distance. Clear water, refreshing water, water that seemed close enough to touch, yet every time they reached for it, it disappeared. The same thing happened with food. They could see it, they could smell it, but they could never take a single bite. The torment was not merely physical. It was deeply personal. Each person was forced to relive moments from their earthly life, They saw the poor people they had ignored. They heard the cries they had dismissed. They remembered every opportunity they had been given to show mercy and every excuse they had used to avoid doing so. The suffering came from knowing that they could have chosen differently. One after another, sins replayed before them. A hungry family turned away. A struggling widow forgotten. A child left without help. A desperate worker ignored. Every memory became a source of endless pain. As I watched, a terrifying realization entered my heart. I was not being shown these things for entertainment. I was being warned. Suddenly, I began examining my own life. How many times had I walked past suffering without truly seeing it? How many opportunities had I missed because I was focused on protecting my comfort? How many people had I spoken about without actually listening to them? The question struck me with overwhelming force. What if my path continued unchanged? For the first time in many years, I felt genuine fear. Not fear of losing money, not fear of losing influence, not fear of political defeat. I feared standing before God and realizing that I had wasted the resources He entrusted to me. My entire body trembled. And then the vision became even more personal. Among all those suffering souls, one particular figure stepped forward from the darkness. What happened next would remind me of a story from Scripture that I had heard many times before, but never truly understood. The figure slowly emerged from the shadows. At first, I could not see his face clearly. I only noticed that he was dressed in an expensive suit. Even in that place of suffering, there were signs that he had once been a man of great wealth and influence. As the scene became clearer, I understood who he represented. He was a leader, not necessarily one specific person, but a reflection of many powerful men who had spent their lives accumulating possessions while ignoring the cries of those around them. I watched as moments from his earthly life appeared before him. He owned numerous businesses. He possessed valuable properties. His wealth continued to grow year after year. People admired his success. Many envied his lifestyle. Yet every day, poor people came to him seeking help. Some needed food, some needed medicine, some needed work, some simply needed someone to care. Again and again, he turned them away. Sometimes he ignored them completely. Sometimes he convinced himself that their problems were not his responsibility. Sometimes he promised help that never came. His heart became harder with every passing year. What shocked me most was that he did not consider himself a cruel man while he was alive. He believed he was successful. He believed he was wise. He believed he had earned everything he possessed. Then I saw him where he was now. The proud leader who once commanded respect was on his knees. The confident businessman who once controlled vast resources was broken. The powerful man who once gave orders could no longer help himself. He cried out in agony. His voice echoed through the darkness. Please, just one drop of water. Only one drop. Nothing more. Not wealth. Not power. Not another opportunity to become rich. Just one drop of water. But no answer came. No relief arrived. No one responded to his plea. The silence was devastating. As I watched him, I felt a chill move through my entire being. Suddenly, a passage from Scripture came rushing back into my mind. I remembered hearing it years before. The story of the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man lived in luxury while Lazarus suffered outside his gate. One enjoyed comfort, the other endured hardship. Then death changed everything. Lazarus was comforted. The rich man found himself in torment, and there too he begged for water, just a single drop. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Everything I was witnessing mirrored the warning found in the Gospel of Luke. At that moment, I understood something that I had never fully grasped before. The issue was not merely wealth. The issue was the condition of the heart. Money itself was not the enemy. Power itself was not the enemy. The real danger was becoming so consumed by comfort and success that the suffering of others no longer mattered. The vision was exposing a truth that cut deeply into my soul. As I continued watching, I could not stop asking myself one painful question. Had my own heart started moving in the same direction? The thought terrified me. When the vision finally began to fade, I knew I could not simply forget what I had seen and return to life as usual. I needed answers. And only a few days later, those answers would come from an unexpected conversation inside a small church in Soweto. For several days after the vision, I could not find peace. The images remained in my mind from the moment I woke up until I went to sleep again. No meeting, no speech, and no political discussion could distract me from what I had witnessed. The cries, the darkness, and the desperate plea for a single drop of water followed me everywhere. I knew I needed guidance. That is why I decided to visit a small church in Soweto. It was not a grand building. There were no impressive decorations or luxurious surroundings. Yet from the moment I entered, I felt a sense of calm that had been missing from my life since the vision. There I met Pastor Samuel Nkosi. He was a humble man with kind eyes and a quiet manner of speaking. He welcomed me warmly and invited me to sit down. For nearly an hour, I told him everything. I described the light. I described the voice. I described the abyss. I described the suffering souls. And I described the wealthy leader begging for a single drop of water. The pastor listened carefully without interrupting. When I finished speaking, he remained silent for a moment. Then he reached for his Bible. He slowly opened it to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 16. He began reading the story of the rich man and Lazarus. As the words filled the room, my heart started beating faster. The rich man lived in luxury every day. Lazarus lay outside his gate, suffering and neglected. One man enjoyed comfort. The other endured hardship. Then death came. Lazarus was carried to a place of comfort. The rich man found himself in torment. As Pastor Nkosi continued reading, I felt chills run through my body. The rich man begged for water, just a drop. Then he begged for another chance. He wanted to warn his family. He wanted them to change before it was too late. But that opportunity was gone. The pastor closed the Bible and looked directly at me. My brother, he said softly, God has shown you a warning while there is still time to respond. Those words struck my heart. I sat there speechless. The vision and the scripture matched with astonishing clarity. For the first time, I understood that God was not merely showing me the fate of others. He was confronting me. He was asking me what I would do with the blessings, influence, and resources He had entrusted to my care. When I left that church, I knew something had changed inside me. But I also knew that understanding the warning would not be enough. A far greater challenge was waiting ahead. I now had to decide whether I would obey what God was showing me or continue living exactly as I had before. That decision would begin the greatest battle of my life. After my conversation with Pastor Samuel Kosi, I expected clarity to come quickly. Instead, a battle began inside me. Every day I thought about the vision. Every night I remembered the voice that had spoken to me. I tried to continue with my normal routine, but something had changed. The things that once occupied my attention no longer felt as important as they had before. For weeks, sleep became difficult. Whenever I closed my eyes, I saw the faces of people living in hardship. I remembered the suffering I had witnessed in Alexandra Township, Soweto, Limpopo, and many other communities across South Africa. I could no longer pretend that their struggles were distant problems belonging to someone else. One question kept returning to my mind. If I died today, what would I say when I stood before God? The question followed me everywhere. It followed me into meetings. It followed me during travel. It followed me when I sat alone in silence. Eventually, I decided to examine my life honestly. I reviewed everything I owned. I looked at my investments. I looked at my savings. I looked at my properties. I looked at the mansion that represented the greatest symbol of my personal success. The numbers were significant. The assets were valuable. Many people would have considered them proof that I had achieved everything a man could hope to achieve. Yet as I looked at them, another thought entered my heart. How much of this do I truly need? That question frightened me. Part of me wanted to hold on to everything. I thought about financial security. I thought about the future. I thought about the comfort that wealth provided. A voice inside me argued that I had earned these things through years of effort and sacrifice. But another voice kept returning. It was not loud. It was not aggressive. Yet it remained persistent. I felt God asking me a simple question. What is the purpose of wealth if it never becomes a blessing to those who are suffering? The struggle became intense. Some days I convinced myself that I could make only small changes and continue living as before. Other days, I felt strongly that God was calling me to do something much greater. The conflict continued for many weeks. Then one morning, while sitting alone and reflecting on everything I had seen and heard, I finally understood what I needed to do. The answer was clear. It was also terrifying, because the decision God was placing before me would shock my friends, surprise my colleagues, and completely alter the direction of my life. And once I made that decision, there would be no turning back. The morning I made my decision felt different from every other morning. For weeks, I had wrestled with fear, doubt, and uncertainty. I had tried to find a comfortable middle ground between obedience and self-preservation. But deep inside, I knew that God was not asking me for a symbolic gesture. He was asking for something real. I could no longer ignore it. So I made a decision that shocked everyone around me. I put my largest mansion up for sale. The property that had become a symbol of success was no longer something I wanted to hold on to at all costs. Soon afterward, I began liquidating several luxury assets that I had accumulated over the years. Expensive possessions that once seemed important suddenly felt insignificant when compared to the suffering of people I had seen. I also redirected personal investments and retirement funds toward community support projects. The reaction was immediate. Some friends thought I had lost my mind. Others warned me that I was destroying my financial future. A few people suggested that I was acting out of emotion and would eventually regret my choices. They could not understand why anyone would voluntarily surrender so much wealth. To be honest, there were moments when I questioned myself as well. But every time doubt appeared, I remembered the vision. I remembered the cries. I remembered the rich man begging for a single drop of water. And I remembered the question God had placed in my heart. What are your possessions for if they never become a blessing to others? As resources became available, projects began taking shape. Families received safe housing. Clean water wells were constructed in struggling communities. Educational support programs opened doors for children who had previously seen very little hope for the future. Vocational training initiatives helped people develop practical skills that could create lasting opportunities. What amazed me most was not the scale of the projects. It was the change taking place inside me. For years, I had believed that peace came from financial security. I had believed that comfort came from having more. Yet, after letting go of so much, I experienced something I had not felt in a very long time. Peace. Real peace. Not the peace that comes from wealth. Not the peace that comes from status. But the peace that comes from knowing you are finally obeying what God has placed before you. And that peace would lead me into an even deeper transformation. Because I soon realized that helping the poor from a distance was not enough. God wanted me to do something more difficult. He wanted me to truly know them. After selling properties, funding community projects, and redirecting much of my personal wealth, I initially believed I had done what God was asking of me. But I was wrong. One day, while reflecting on everything that had happened, I sensed another lesson forming in my heart. It was as if God was showing me that generosity alone was not enough. Writing checks and funding programs could help people, but it could not replace understanding them. So I began spending more time in places that I had previously visited only briefly. I traveled regularly to Soweto. I spent time in Alexandra Township. I visited communities in Limpopo and the Eastern Cape. Instead of arriving for short appearances and leaving quickly, I stayed longer. I sat with families. I shared meals. I listened. For the first time in many years, I stopped speaking long enough to truly hear what people were carrying inside their hearts. I met mothers who somehow stretched tiny amounts of money to feed their children. I met fathers desperately searching for work. I met grandparents raising entire households after losing younger family members. I met children who walked many kilometers each day simply to attend school. What struck me most was not their poverty. It was their resilience. Despite hardship, many still laughed. Despite uncertainty, many still hoped. Despite disappointment, many still believed that tomorrow could be better than today. I realized how wrong I had been. Poor people do not need pity. Pity looks down on people. They need respect. They need opportunity. They need leaders willing to listen before speaking. The more time I spent among these communities, the more my understanding of wealth changed. I had once measured wealth by bank accounts, investments, and property. Now I began measuring it differently. A mother who sacrificed everything for her children possessed a form of wealth that money could never buy. A family that shared their last meal with a neighbor possessed a richness many millionaires never discover. A community that stood together during hardship possessed something more valuable than luxury. Ironically, the people I thought I was helping ended up teaching me. They taught me gratitude. They taught me humility. They taught me that dignity cannot be purchased. Most importantly, they taught me that true wealth is not found in what we keep for ourselves. It is found in what we are willing to give away. By then, I understood something that every leader needs to hear. And it is the lesson I want to share before this story comes to its conclusion. The longer I reflected on everything that had happened, the more clearly I understood the lesson God was teaching me. For many years, I had believed that leadership was measured by influence. I believed success was measured by achievements. I believed power was measured by how many people listened when you spoke. But after the vision, after the warning, and after spending time among ordinary families struggling to survive, I discovered something entirely different. Power cannot save your soul. Money cannot save your soul. Fame cannot save your soul. A person may command armies, lead governments, control businesses, or possess enormous wealth, yet still stand spiritually bankrupt before God. That truth changed me forever. I realized that God is not impressed by titles. He is not impressed by luxury. He is not impressed by the size of a bank account. What God looks for is mercy. He looks for compassion. He looks for a heart that remains sensitive to the suffering of others. I once thought that great leaders were defined by what they accumulated. Today, I believe great leaders are defined by what they are willing to sacrifice. A leader's true legacy is not found in the buildings they own. It is found in the lives they improve. It is not measured by how many people serve them. It is measured by how many people they serve. Whenever I think back to that terrifying vision, I remember the rich and powerful people I saw trapped in endless regret. None of them were begging for more money. None of them were asking for another business opportunity. None of them wanted a larger estate or greater influence. They wanted another chance. Just one more opportunity to show kindness. Just one more opportunity to help someone in need. Just one more opportunity to obey God. But that opportunity was gone. And that is why I am sharing this story today. Not to create fear, not to condemn anyone, but to remind every leader, every business owner, every professional, and every successful person that there is still time. There is still time to care. There is still time to listen. There is still time to help. If God were to ask me today, what did you do for the poorest people I placed in your path? I could answer with peace in my heart. Not because I have been perfect, not because I have done everything right, but because I chose to respond when He called me. The greatest truth I learned is this. The night Jesus showed me hell was not merely a warning about judgment. It was an act of mercy. He was not only showing me where a hardened heart could lead. He was rescuing me from becoming one of the people I saw there. And for that, I will remain grateful for the rest of my life. After everything that happened, I came to understand a truth that I wish I had learned much earlier in life. No position of authority lasts forever. No amount of money lasts forever. No reputation lasts forever. Every leader, every business owner, every public figure, and every ordinary person will one day stand before God. On that day, our titles will not matter. Our wealth will not matter. What will matter is how we treated the people God placed in our path. The vision I received changed the way I see leadership. I no longer believe leadership is about being served. I believe leadership is about serving others. I no longer believe success is measured by how much we possess. I believe success is measured by how much good we leave behind. After all that I experienced, I understand that no power can endure if it does not serve the people. Money, status, and fame cannot bring dignity to a nation if its people continue to live in injustice, poverty, and division. Today, our world faces too much conflict, inequality, and suffering. I pray for a better future for South Africa, for the people of the United States, and for everyone around the world who longs for peace and justice. Let us reject selfishness and uncontrolled greed. Let us stand against injustice, oppression, and every force that divides human beings. Let us build communities founded on respect, unity, compassion, and responsibility toward future generations. No matter how difficult the road may become, never lose faith in the future. Every nation possesses the power to change its destiny when its people unite around what is right and refuse to surrender to hopelessness. I believe Africa can rise. I believe justice can prevail. I believe hope belongs to those who refuse to abandon their vision of a better world. If this story has touched your heart, I encourage you to leave a message of hope for someone who may be struggling today. Your words could become the encouragement that another person desperately needs. And if you believe that compassion, justice, and mercy still matter, continue working with us as we spread hope to more people across the world. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for your time. And thank you for allowing me to share the lesson that changed my life forever. May God bless you, guide you, and fill your heart with mercy for those who need it most. Thank you for everything.